The Forbidden Abyss. The Black Hole of HFY 9. A name that sent shivers down the spines of every species in the galaxy. It was a place of whispers and warnings, where ships vanished without a trace. Not destroyed, not crippled, just gone. Hundreds of expeditions have been launched, from the most powerful empires, the most advanced civilizations. None had ever returned. The Galactic Council had long since forbidden travel near it. It was marked as a death zone, a place that defied all logic and reason. No one was foolish enough to test its limits. No one was brave enough to step beyond the event horizon. No one, except humans. The warning that no one heeded. The last attempt to study HFY 9 had ended in disaster. A fleet of 20 ships had been sent by the Kelvran technocracy, one of the most advanced species in the known universe. They had prepared for everything. They had shields that could withstand supernovae, weapons that could shatter planets, AI systems that could calculate 1 trillion outcomes in a single breath. And yet, the moment they crossed into the black hole's gravitational influence, they vanished. No wreckage, no distress calls, nothing. The Galactic Council declared HFY 9 a no-fly zone. To go there was to disappear. To go there was to die. And so, the black hole remained untouched. A cosmic graveyard, waiting for its next victim. The signal that changed everything. For centuries, HFY 9 remained silent. Then, one day, a signal was detected. Weak, fragmented, barely readable, but undeniably artificial. Something or someone was inside the black hole. The council convened an emergency session. What did it mean? Was it a distress call from a lost expedition? A warning from something trapped within? Or was it something far more dangerous? Theories spread across the galaxy. Some believed it was an ancient intelligence, calling for help. Others feared it was a trap set by something beyond comprehension. One thing was certain. Someone needed to investigate. The galaxy hesitates, but humans step forward. The Galactic Council, in its usual fashion, debated endlessly. Should they risk a probe? A robotic scout? Perhaps send a small, expendable fleet? No one volunteered. No species was willing to risk their ships, their people, their technology. No one wanted to be the next Kelvran disaster. And so, for years, the signal remained unanswered. Until Earth spoke up. Until humanity stepped forward. We'll go. 3 simple words. And the entire galaxy went silent. Why humans? The council was in shock. Humans had long been seen as reckless explorers, curious to the point of insanity, willing to push boundaries no one else dared. They were the only species that had traveled to every corner of the known galaxy. Not out of necessity, not out of conquest, but simply because they wanted to know. And now, they wanted to know the secrets of HFY 9. You can't be serious. The Kelvran diplomat had scoffed. No one comes back from the abyss. The human ambassador smiled. Then we'll be the first. The mission that would change everything. And just like that, the most daring mission in history was born. The ship was named Erebus 1, built for the impossible. Crewed by humanity's best pilots, scientists, and engineers. Every empire watched in horror as the humans prepared to do the unthinkable. To go where no living being had ever returned from. To step into the unknown. To enter the forbidden abyss. And as the Erebus 1 launched into the void, one thought echoed across the stars. If anyone can survive this, it's the humans. The mysterious signal. The Erebus 1 was more than a ship. It was humanity's declaration to the universe. A statement that fear would not control them. That the unknown was meant to be explored, not avoided. And now, it was heading straight into the most feared anomaly in existence. The black hole of HFY 9. The abyss where no one returned. And inside, something was calling them. The signal that shouldn't exist. For centuries, HFY 9 had been silent. Then a few months ago, a signal emerged. It wasn't natural. It wasn't random noise. It was intelligent. A repeating sequence of mathematical patterns. A message buried inside the chaos of the black hole's radiation. But what made it truly terrifying was that the signal contained something impossible. A ship identification code. a code that matched one of the missing Kelvin vessels, a ship that had disappeared over 100 years ago. And yet here it was, still transmitting. How could that be possible? The Kelvin fleet had been swallowed by the black hole. By all known science, those ships should have been crushed beyond recognition, turned into spaghettified wreckage, stretched into infinite nothingness. But now one of those ships was alive and sending out a message. The Galactic Council was horrified. What if the missing crew was still inside? What if something had kept them alive? What if they weren't alone in there? The Council's greatest minds argued for months. They sent probes. They sent drones. None returned. But the signal remained. Waiting. Calling. A voice from the void, begging for someone to listen. Humanity decides to investigate. While the rest of the galaxy debated, humanity took action. They analyzed the signal. They deciphered the mathematical sequences. And then they found something chilling. The message wasn't just a distress call. It contained coordinates. A point inside the black hole. A place where something or someone was still waiting. And the moment humanity realized this, their decision was made. They were going in. The Galactic Council's last warning. Before departure, the Galactic Council held a final meeting. For the first time, every major species attended. Even those who normally ignored council affairs had come to witness the madness of humanity firsthand. The Kelvin High Speaker addressed the room. You do not understand what you are doing. We lost 20 ships, thousands of lives. We tried to escape its pull. We failed. Do not throw your lives away. The human ambassador leaned forward. You tried to run. We are not running. There was nothing else to say. The final preparations. The Erebus One was equipped with humanity's best technology. A warp-resistant hull designed for extreme gravity fields. AI-controlled gravity dampeners to counter the black hole's pull. A quantum stabilizer to maintain time synchronization. And a crew of humans who refused to fear the unknown. This wasn't just a scientific mission. It was a challenge. A way of proving, once and for all, that nothing in the universe was beyond humanity's reach. The last words before the mission. Before launch, the captain of the Erebus One sent a final message. It was transmitted to every species in the galaxy. A single statement recorded for history. We are humanity. We were born on a death world. We tamed the wilds. We conquered the stars. And now, we go where none have gone before. If we return, the galaxy will have its answers. If we do not, then let this be our legacy. With that, the transmission ended, and the ship vanished into the void, heading straight into the abyss, heading toward the impossible. The human expedition begins. The Erebus One was the most advanced ship humanity had ever built, not just because of its technology, not just because of its design, but because of the people aboard. A crew of scientists, engineers, pilots, and explorers, each one chosen for a single reason. They were willing to go where no one else dared. They weren't just traveling into a black hole. They were traveling into the unknown. And for humans, that was the greatest challenge of all. The crew that would make history. Captain Elias Mercer, the leader. A man who had seen the edges of the known universe and wanted to go further. His motto, there is no such thing as impossible. Dr. Helen Carter, the physicist. She had spent her life studying black holes and gravitational anomalies. Now, she was about to step inside one. Commander Victor Huang, the pilot, the best in the fleet. He had once landed a ship on a collapsing neutron star. This mission was his kind of challenge. Dr. Raina Voss, the AI specialist. She had programmed the ship's quantum stabilizer. Without it, time itself could tear them apart. Together, they were humanity's best hope. Or its final expedition. The final checklists. The Erebus One hovered near the event horizon of Xiphos 9. The black hole dominated the view. A swirling abyss of light and shadow. A gravity, well, so powerful that not even time escaped untouched. The ship's AI ran the last system check. Everything was ready, except for one thing. There was no guarantee of survival. The black hole had swallowed entire fleets. It had erased civilizations. And now, they were going in on purpose. Captain Mercer turned to his crew. This is your last chance to back out. No one moved. No one spoke. Dr. Carter smirked. Sir, if we wanted safe, we wouldn't be here. The captain smiled. Then let's make history. The dive into darkness. The Erebus 1 engaged its event horizon stabilizer. The ship lurched forward. Alarms blared as gravity distorted around them. Light twisted into impossible shapes. Space itself rippled. Then, impact. Not a collision. Not an explosion. But something else. Something that felt like passing through a doorway. And suddenly, the universe changed. Inside the black hole, the crew gasped. They weren't falling. They weren't dying. They were somewhere else. The sky was filled with stars that shouldn't exist. Massive structures floated in the void. And in the distance, a ship, a Kelvin vessel, the same one that had vanished 100 years ago. And it was still intact, still sending the signal. Captain Mercer's voice came over the comms. We're not alone. And then, the ship's sensors picked up something else. Something moving toward them. Something big. Something alive. The moment everything changed. The crew had spent months preparing for this mission. But nothing could have prepared them for what they saw next. A station, bigger than a moon, orbiting something impossible. A structure inside a black hole. It defied all known laws of physics. It shouldn't exist. And yet, here it was. And then, the ship's AI spoke. Incoming transmission. The signal was no longer a mystery. It was a message. And it wasn't just coming from the lost ship. It was coming from inside the station. A voice. Weak. Scrambled. But unmistakably alien. Help us. And in that moment, the crew of the Erebus 1 realized the truth. They weren't the first to enter the black hole. They weren't the first to try to understand it. But they might be the first to escape it. If they could survive what came next. Crossing the event horizon, the Erebus 1 had done the impossible. It had entered the black hole and survived. Now it was somewhere beyond known physics. The laws of reality didn't behave as they should. Time moved differently. Light didn't bend the way it was supposed to. But the most disturbing part? They weren't alone. The impossible station. The station ahead of them was massive. Larger than anything humanity had ever built. It wasn't made of metal. Not rock. Something else. A material that absorbed light, yet shimmered like liquid. And it was ancient. The architecture was elegant, but decayed. A monument to something long forgotten. And yet, it still functioned. Lights flickered inside. Energy readings spiked. And most terrifying of all, the distress signal was coming from within. The crew's dilemma. Captain Mercer stared at the station through the viewport. It's not abandoned, he said. Dr. Carter's hands trembled as she read the scans. It's been here for millions of years. But who built it? Commander Huang asked. No one had an answer. But one thing was clear. Whatever was inside that station, it was calling them. Docking with the unknown. The Erebus 1 approached the station. Slowly. Carefully. Every instinct told them to turn back. But that wasn't an option. Not for humans. They had come this far. They were going to finish what they started. The ship's AI locked onto a docking point. It was open, as if someone or something was waiting for them. Captain Mercer sighed. Suit up. The crew prepared to step inside. And, as the airlock hissed open, they crossed the threshold into the unknown. Inside the station, the interior was silent. Not cold, not dead, but watching. The walls pulsed faintly like a living organism. The gravity was slightly off. Time felt slower. And then, the first sign of life appeared. A shadow moved. Not a trick of the light. Something real. Something waiting. They were not alone. The echoes of the past. They moved through the station, weapons ready. The corridors were alien, yet strangely familiar. Symbols and markings. Almost mathematical, almost language. Dr. Voss recorded everything. This technology, it's older than anything we've ever seen. Then they found the bodies. Dozens of them. Preserved. Perfectly intact. Not human. Not any species known to the Galactic Council. Something else. Something ancient. And then, one of the bodies moved. The survivors. The crew froze. The figure stirred, coughing weakly. Skin pale, eyes hollow. But alive. Captain Mercer knelt beside them. The figure's lips moved. A voice echoed in their minds, directly, without sound. You shouldn't have come. Then the walls shook. A deep, reverberating roar filled the station, and the crew realized they had just woken something up, something that had been waiting, something that had been trapped, and now it was free. The horror awakens. The station lurched. Lights flickered. Gravity faltered. Something moved in the darkness. Something massive. The true entity of Xiphos 9. It had been waiting for centuries for someone to open the door. And now, the humans had done exactly that. The walls began to shift. Metal turned to flesh. The station wasn't just a building. It was alive, and it had noticed them. The race against time. Dr. Carter grabbed her scanner. "Captain, whatever this place is, it's waking up." Captain Mercer turned to his crew. "Back to the ship. Now." But the doors sealed shut. They were trapped, and the station was changing, twisting, warping, like something unfolding from another dimension. Something impossible. And then the voice returned. A deep, resonant whisper. Not from the survivor, not from the walls, but from the void itself. "You're not supposed to be here." The crew stared in horror. Because this wasn't just a station. This wasn't just a lost civilization. This was something far worse. And now they were part of it. The lost civilization. The Erebus One's crew stood frozen. The station was alive. Not in the way a machine hums with power. Not in the way a ship responds to its crew. This was different. The walls pulsed like the slow breath of a sleeping giant. The air vibrated, filled with an unseen presence. And in the silence, the whisper returned. "You're not supposed to be here." It didn't come from the survivor. It didn't come from the ship's comms. It came from everywhere. From the walls. From the void itself. And then, the survivor opened their eyes. And the truth began to unfold. The last of their kind. The alien in front of them was ancient. Not in appearance. Not in decay. But in the weight of their presence. Their eyes held centuries of knowledge. Centuries of loss. Their voice was weak but clear, echoing directly into their minds. "You should not have come." Dr. Carter knelt beside them. "Who are you?" The alien exhaled, struggling for breath. And then they spoke a name that had been lost to time. "We are the Zalari." The crew exchanged glances. That name didn't exist in any galactic records. This species had been erased from history. But somehow, they were here, inside the black hole, still alive. The civilization that vanished. The Zalari survivor looked at them with something beyond fear, beyond desperation. It was a warning. "We were like you once," they whispered. "Explorers, scientists, dreamers. We sought knowledge, and we found this place." They trembled, their body weakening. "We thought we had discovered something great, but we were wrong." The lights flickered again. The walls shuddered. Something was moving. Something was waking up. The true nature of Xiphos 9. The crew of the Erebus One had come to investigate a black hole. But what they had really found was something else. Something far older. Something far more dangerous. The Zalari pointed toward the walls. "This is not a station. It is not a city. It is a prison." Captain Mercer's breath caught in his throat. A prison for what? The Zalari's expression darkened. "For the thing that lives in the dark. The thing that devours stars. The thing that feeds on time itself." The station trembled. A low, guttural sound rumbled through the structure. A sound that did not come from metal. Did not come from machinery. It came from something alive. And it had felt them. The warning too late. The Zalari reached out, gripping Mercer's arm. Their fingers shook. "You must leave. Now." Dr. Carter shook her head. "We can take you with us." But the Zalari closed their eyes. "It's too late." The station lurched violently. The ship's AI blared warnings. Gravitational instability increasing. Temporal distortions detected. "We're no longer alone." Then the lights died. And in the absolute darkness, the whisper came again. "I see you." The awakening of the void. The darkness was not empty. It was not silence. It was a presence. Something that had been sleeping for eons. And now, because of them, it was awake. The walls twisted. The corridors shifted. The station was no longer a sanctuary. It was turning into a trap. Captain Mercer grabbed his comms. "Get back to the ship. Now." The crew ran. And behind them, the darkness began to move. A shape without form. A hunger without limit. Something that had been waiting for a door to open. and the humans had just given it one. The race against time. The ship's AI blared again. Multiple anomalies detected. Spatial warping increasing. Hull integrity at risk. Commander Huang shoved Dr. Voss toward the airlock. Move! They ran. Lights flickered. The corridors twisted behind them. Reality itself was warping. And then, a black tendril shot from the darkness. It snatched Dr. Carter's leg. She screamed. Mercer and Huang grabbed her arms. The Zalari stumbled forward. You cannot let it touch you. They pulled. The darkness fought back. Then, blinding light. The ship's automated defense cannons fired. The tendril shrieked. And Dr. Carter was free. They scrambled inside the ship. The airlock slammed shut. And then, the blackness outside roared. A sound of pure hunger. Something vast was stirring. Something angry. And it was not going to let them leave. A deadly decision. Inside the cockpit, alarms screamed. The ship's AI was shutting down. Captain, we're losing power. Dr. Voss yelled. It's trying to keep us here, Mercer growled. The Zalari collapsed to their knees. It's always been waiting. Waiting for someone to come. Waiting for an exit. Captain Mercer's eyes widened. That's why the station let us in. The truth hit them like a tidal wave. This wasn't just a prison. It was a trap. Something had built this place to contain the entity. But it couldn't escape on its own. It needed a door to open. And now, humanity had become that door. The escape plan. They had one chance. One shot to escape before the entity fully awoke. Dr. Voss slammed commands into the console. I can override the quantum stabilizer. It'll break the ship apart, Huang warned. Better us than the entire galaxy. Mercer didn't hesitate. Do it. The ship's thrusters ignited. A shockwave erupted as the Erebus 1 ripped away from the station. The blackness lashed out, reaching, trying to pull them back. But then, they broke free. And the station, the entity, the nightmare, collapsed behind them. Gone. For now. The horror within. The Erebus 1 had escaped. But they weren't safe. The ship groaned under the strain of what it had just endured. Systems flickered. Gravity stabilizers failed. And time itself felt wrong. Because even though they had left the station behind, something had come with them. The shadow in the ship. Dr. Voss was the first to notice it. A darkness in the corner of the control room. Not a shadow. Not a trick of the light. Something else. Something watching. The moment she blinked, it was gone. But she knew. It was still there. Waiting. The crew begins to fracture. Dr. Carter collapsed against the console, breathing heavily. Something's wrong. Captain Mercer turned to her. What do you mean? She shuddered. I can still hear it. No one spoke. Because she wasn't the only one. One by one, they all realized the same thing. The whisper hadn't stayed in the station. It had followed them. I see you. The ship is no longer theirs. Alarms blared. Hull integrity compromised. Navigation system failing. Huang swore. It's trying to pull us back. The ship was fighting them. The entity wasn't finished with them yet. They had escaped the black hole. But the black hole was inside them now. Dr. Carter vanishes. The moment it happened, it was too fast to stop. Dr. Carter turned a corner in the hallway. And then she was gone. No scream. No sound. Just gone. Like she had never been there at all. The crew searched. They checked every corridor. Every vent. Every possible space. Nothing. The ship had erased her. And the whisper returned. More will follow. What was the entity? The Zalari survivor, still weak, spoke at last. It does not kill in the way you understand. It devours existence itself. Mercer's hands clenched into fists. Then how do we stop it? The Zalari's voice trembled. You don't. You run. A desperate plan. Commander Huang grabbed the manual override. If we fire the stabilizer core, we might break free. Dr. Voss shook her head. That will kill us. Mercer exhaled. If we don't, we're already dead. The entity was spreading. Its presence filled the air. Reality itself was glitching. If they stayed any longer, none of them would be real anymore. The final choice. The Zalari whispered one last warning. If you leave, it will always follow. Mercer stared at them. Then we make sure there's nothing left to follow. He turned to Huang. Do it. Huang slammed his hand onto the stabilizer controls. A blast of energy surged through the ship. The entity screamed. The shadows collapsed. And in an instant, the Erebus One was alone again. They had survived. But at what cost? The whisper was gone. The shadows were silent. But the crew was missing one of their own. Dr. Carter was gone forever. And the Zalari's warning still echoed in Mercer's mind. It will always follow. Because they hadn't destroyed the entity. They had just run faster than it could catch them. This time, the cold, unsettling truth. Huang stared at the view screen. The black hole was behind them now, but still looked wrong, like it was watching them. Dr. Voss whispered what they were all thinking. We were never supposed to leave. And for the first time in his life, Captain Mercer was afraid. Because deep down he knew the mission wasn't over. It would never be over. Not as long as Xiphos 9 still existed. Not as long as the entity remembered them. And someday, it would come for them again. Humanity's greatest gamble. The Erebus One had survived. But survival was not victory. Dr. Carter was gone. The Zalari's warning haunted them. And the black hole, Xiphos 9, still existed. Still waiting. Still hungry. And if they didn't act now, it would take more than just them. It would take the entire galaxy. The unseen war. The crew gathered in the command center. Huang, hands shaking, stared at the sensor readings. It's still reaching for us. Dr. Voss ran calculations on the quantum stabilizer. Her voice was hollow. It's learning. Mercer's jaw clenched. They had left it inside the event horizon. But it was evolving, understanding how to bend time and space. Soon, it would find a way out. And when it did, there would be no stopping it. The final decision. Mercer turned to his crew. We have one chance. They all knew what he meant. They had to destroy Xiphos 9, the station, the entity, the black hole itself. Dr. Voss shook her head. Captain, that's impossible. Mercer exhaled. So it was escaping it. They had done the impossible before. They would do it again. Or they would die trying. The plan. The Zalari survivor, weak but listening, finally spoke. You intend to collapse the anomaly. Mercer nodded. If we don't, it will spread. The Zalari's expression darkened. It will fight back. Dr. Voss looked up from her console. It already is. The ship shook violently. A shadow moved across the screen. Not a ship, not a fleet. Something bigger. Something that had no shape, yet was everywhere. And suddenly, every alarm blared at once. It's coming. The race against time. The plan was insane. They would drop their entire quantum stabilizer core into the black hole. If their calculations were correct, the chain reaction would trigger a singularity collapse. Xiphos 9 would consume itself. The entity would have no escape. But if they were wrong, the explosion would erase them all. No ship, no bodies, just nothing. Mercer took a deep breath. Set the core to overload. Dr. Voss hesitated. This will destroy the Erebus One too. The captain nodded. Then we make sure we're not on it when it blows. The final battle. As they prepped the stabilizer core, the ship groaned. The entity was getting desperate. It had waited centuries for an escape. It was not going to let them take this chance away. And so it attacked. The lights flickered. The air grew cold. Reality itself twisted. It was inside the ship again. Huang screamed. The shadows ripped at him. The entity was no longer whispering. It was roaring, and it was angry. The last stand. Dr. Voss activated the stabilizer overload. A countdown began. 10. The ship buckled under the force. 9. The shadows lashed out, grabbing Mercer. 8. The Zalari shouted something in a forgotten language. 7. Huang, bleeding, crawled toward the escape pod controls. 6. The entity screamed in their minds. 5. Mercer broke free. 4. Dr. Voss hit the final launch sequence. 3. The escape pods ejected. 2. The ship cracked apart. 1. And then everything went white. The end of Xiphos 9. The Erebus One exploded. The quantum stabilizer detonated inside the black hole. And for the first time in its impossible existence, Xiphos 9 began to collapse. The entity howled. The void shrank. Space warped. And then it was gone. The black hole. The station. The thing that had lived inside it. All of it erased. And in the silence that followed, humanity had won. Aftermath. A universe changed forever. The escape pods drifted in space. The survivors, silent. They had done it. They had destroyed something that had haunted the galaxy for eons. But at a cost. The Erebus One was gone. Dr. Carter was gone. And the black hole was no longer there to study. Only one thing remained. A warning. Because even though Xiphos 9 was destroyed, the entity had left something behind. It had learned. And somewhere out in the dark, it was waiting for another door to open. The escape and the legacy. The Erebus One was gone. The black hole of Xiphos 9 was erased from existence. And for the first time in galactic history, the universe was free from a threat it never even understood. But the survivors? They weren't celebrating. They were simply floating in silence. Drifting in the aftermath, the escape pods drifted through deep space. Their sensors struggled to adjust. Where there had once been a massive gravitational anomaly, now there was nothing. No debris, no energy readings, no trace that Xiphos 9 had ever existed. And yet, each survivor felt its absence. Not just as scientists, not just as explorers, but as people who had looked into the abyss and barely escaped. The final message. A transmission crackled through their comms. Not from the Galactic Council, not from Earth, but from the Zalari survivor. Their voice was weak, barely a whisper. It is done. Captain Mercer looked over, barely able to process what they had lost. He managed to ask, "Did we kill it?" The Zalari hesitated. Then, they shook their head. "No." A chill spread through the crew. "Then what do we do?" Mercer whispered. The Zalari's eyes darkened. "We only delayed it. The galaxy reacts." The rescue took weeks. When the escape pods were finally recovered, the survivors were treated as heroes. The Galactic Council was in shock. For centuries, they had feared the black hole. Now it was gone. Humanity had done the impossible again. And yet, the celebrations were short-lived. Because the survivors knew the truth. They had stopped the entity this time. But it had learned. It had changed. And the next time it appeared, it would be stronger. Humanity's new purpose. The official report stated, Xiphos 9 no longer exists. The black hole was an anomaly, a natural collapse. The Erebus One was lost in a heroic final mission. But those who were there, they knew better. And humanity, as a species, now had a new mission. They had once been explorers. Now, they had become something else. Guardians. Because if the entity ever returned, if it ever found another way to crawl back into the universe, humanity would be there to stop it, no matter the cost. The final whisper. Years passed. The memory of Xiphos 9 faded into history. A myth, a legend. Some doubted the story. Some said it had all been exaggerated. And then, one night, as Captain Mercer sat alone, staring at the endless void of space, he heard again. A whisper. A voice from the dark. "I remember you." And in that moment, he knew the war was not over. It had only just begun.